welcome to the Evening Review. Let's take a look at today's newspaper. And also stay tuned when we will interview Mr. Mathias Haufiku, who is part of a group of journalists that wrote to President Hage Geingob on the conduct of his media advisor, Dr. Alfredo Hengari. We are joined in studio by Mathias Haufiku, who is part of a steering committee working towards the establishment of the first media union in Namibia. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Akon, and thank you for having me.
The journalist recently wrote to President Hage Geingob complaining about the conduct of his media advisor, Dr. Alfredo Hengari. What prompted this action?
Yeah, Akon, this is not something that happened overnight. There has been a sequence of events and incidents involving media practitioners and the press secretary, Dr. Hengari. Since he's coming into office, we have on several occasions, some media houses have met with him to iron out certain differences that can be improved upon. Some, of course, there was also informal discussions as to the way that State House handles media affairs, being questions that are posed to the presidency, or being the setup of press events at State House, the selective culture of who gets media invitations or media statements first, all those type of things. So this has been a sequence that has been building up. And we just felt that the most recent event at the last COVID briefing, I think that was the culmination of it all, where we felt that I think enough is enough. We need to now speak up because these things are clearly adversely affecting our operations and the industry as a whole. Of course, the letter shouldn't be construed as us running away from being held accountable. We are not beyond reproach. We've always maintained that we should be criticized when we are wrong, and we should take corrective measures when called upon to do so. So really, this has been coming a long time. Mr. Hengari knows it himself. We've taken it up with him also. Sometimes he just brushed it off, and this is really why we decided to take this step as a group of concerned journalists.
And then the question would be raised as to why you didn't take this to the media ombudsman instead.
Yeah, we should understand the very nature and the existence of the office of the media ombudsman. That's primarily a recourse measure for members of the public who feel aggrieved by media reports. If I, as a journalist, falsely accuse you as a member of the public, that is where you go to the media ombudsman. So the media ombudsman adjudicates complaints against the media, complaints laid by the members of the public. I believe, if I'm not wrong, it was at the beginning of August or late July. Mr. Hengari himself laid a complaint against the Namibian for one of the stories they ran. So that's primarily the work of the media ombudsman, and that's why we didn't write to the media ombudsman.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, do you perhaps not, or rather, let me first ask, what measures have you made to engage him now as a group of journalists outside of your individual media organizations?
Yeah. Well, there is an official WhatsApp group, the Namibian Presidency WhatsApp group, where we have constant interaction with the team at the presidency as to how we can improve measures. We've had these discussions over time, especially since the beginning of the COVID pandemic. We understand that it's a new normal. we can't expect the setup at State House for the press to be the way it used to be. There will be changes, but there needs to be consensus reached on these changes. And we have always felt that the press office has taken unilateral decisions in this regard. I mean, just at the previous COVID briefing, the president had to ask the press secretary, where's the press? That speaks a lot, it speaks volumes. And he told the president on national television that there was consensus that's reached that the press would watch via the live stream, which in fact is not truthful. So these are some of the factors really that we felt we needed to take this step. It's very important that our stance is on record. And I believe, and Mr. Hengari, I'm sure, can also attest to it, that we have knocked on his door. I understand the colleagues from NBC also, sometime from last year also, they've had several meetings with him also to discuss the issue of the relationship and the workings of the national broadcaster and his office and so on. So I believe we have attempted to really salvage the situation. And really, this letter shouldn't be viewed as an us versus him situation. It's really about the office itself. It's not the individual. This letter for us, it's a sign that we have extended an olive branch and said, guys, there's a problem. Can we deal with it? Yeah. And
then there would be a notion, perhaps, that Mr. Hengari is acting on instruction, and that is why perhaps you're getting this, that what you're witnessing is not of his own accord, but perhaps that of his appointing authority.
Yeah, the question would be on whose instructions. We can really just work with what we have. What we are seeing is what he's doing. If he's acting on anyone's instructions, then perhaps he should come out and tell us that we are directing our anger into the wrong direction. He must then redirect us. For now, we can only deal with that. We can't accuse anyone else. We've not seen anyone else exerting actions that are contrary to the press freedom ideals of this country. So I believe for now we can only work with what we have, and that's Mr. Hengari himself as the press secretary.
And then this interaction now, one can probably say that the relationship between the press and the Office of the Presidency is not at a high. What impact does this potentially have on press freedom, bearing in mind Namibia's good standing in terms of its free press rankings?
Yeah, we are cognizant of the fact that as much as we have rights as the press, we also have responsibilities that we need to uphold. And we always strive our level best to uphold those responsibilities, primarily because we are the link between the system and the public. So that's why you see, it was rather disheartening when the president asked at the last COVID briefing whether the media boycotted the event. It never even crossed our minds to boycott an event, regardless of the robust interactions that you always see between the president and the journalist. That's why we are not bothered by that. That's part of the game. We can't expect to be treated with soft gloves as the media, and that's why we appreciate the briefings and also the interaction there. But what we don't want is the structural meddling into the affairs of newsrooms. That's what we don't want. Where you have a situation where the press secretary calls the national broadcaster an hour before the 8 o'clock bulletin to try and push through a news item. That's what we are calling against. And for any honest person, they will agree with us that that's not how things should be. We want the relationship to return to the highs that was there. And that's why we've always also maintained that we are ready to sit on the table and also just listen to Mr. Hengari. Perhaps there are certain things that he feels we are doing wrong, we need to work on. But the way he's currently doing things, I don't think is the appropriate manner to resolve the situation and to ensure that we find an amicable solution that's mutually beneficial for us as the media and the presidency for the greater good of the public. Yeah.
And then what do you hope will come from this engagement now that you've written to the president?
Yeah, and I think that now that our stance is on record, it is really my hope that we find consensus. If it wasn't for the current climate, the COVID climate and so on, I think an ideal way would be to engage, to request for an audience and sit and iron out the issues that are there. It's not rocket science. I don't believe it's a situation that can't be remedied. There is a remedy for it, but we need to sit and find common grounds. Yeah.
I want to go back now to the presidency itself. You've had Ambassador Alberto Sogomup, who served in that position, and then we go back to the presidency of Hifikepunye Pohamba, and also obviously the founding president, Dr. Sam Nyama. Has there ever been any relationship that was strained with their spokespersons, or is this the first incident to come to light?
Well, you should remember that with every administration comes different set of challenges, different set of opportunities, because it's a different environment. You can't really, it's not, I don't think it's fair to compare them in that manner. Perhaps President Geingob is the first president to have a press secretary. So it's also a new advent in our media space. Perhaps we should also get used to having such an arrangement. There has been, of course, robust interactions in the past between the press and the presidency during President Pohamba's time, during President Nyoma's time. I mean, when there was even an advertising ban on one of the newspapers in the country. So these things have been there. It's not new, but it's really how you deal with it. Now that they're there, how do you deal with it and to move forward? And I believe we all serve the public. The presidency serves the public. The media serves the public. So if we genuinely both feel that we are serving the public, then I don't see any need why we shouldn't find common grounds for the good of the public. Yeah.
And one issue I want to talk about now is the establishment of a media union. What progress has been made to bring about the birth of Namibia's first labor union for media practitioners?
Yeah, the union is still in its formative stages. We have submitted our application to the Office of the Labour Commissioner for registration. We have a date for the founding convention. Currently, we've set the date at the 26th of September, of course, depending on the COVID situation in the country. So there will be a founding convention where the constitution of the union will be adopted. We've seen a need for this union because there are unions already representing journalists, but they are not unions who are specifically geared to the representation of journalists. You'll see the mine workers, they have their union. The teachers have their union. Nurses also have a union. Now, you see, if you have a situation, and I believe most of, especially the public entities like New Era and NBC, they are represented by NAPU. But NAPU has various other interests and interest groups that they represent. So there's not that focal attention given to the media space. And we know the dynamics of how the media operates and the special need for attention for the industry. So that's why we really feel that there is need for an umbrella that speaks and advocates for the interests of journalism, specifically for that. Yeah.
And then touching on journalism once again, what would you make of the state of journalism in Namibia?
Yeah, well, it's an evolving state, constantly evolving, and we need to keep up with it. You'll see that the public always demands more of us, more professionalism, more in-depth, and so on. I believe that one of the major straining factors has been the cost element, the investment into media, the investment into human resource. It's a very costly exercise. I've always said that you can spend about 20 to 30,000 on compiling, researching, and putting together, say, for instance, an investigative story, which someone would read in 5 minutes and discard. So it's a very cost-intensive industry, especially once it comes to upskilling also. You constantly need to upskill your journalists, send them out for training, and those type of interventions. But we always need to ensure that the public demand is met. And instead of just sitting on our laurels and doing what we've been doing all these years, we also need, as individuals also, to introspect as to where we are in our contribution to the entire fraternity of the media. So I believe there's more that can be done. We are trying our best, but we can do more in that regard. But of course, investment is key in this area also. Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Evening Review.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Please stay tuned for the weather. Good night.